Hello everybody. So it's been a while since I've done a YouTube video, but I had a feeling that this was going to take a bit of explaining, so I thought I'm not going to do it on an Instagram reel because I'm not going to have enough time, so I'm going to just do it in a YouTube video. But basically, I've got a little bit of a story time for you guys. So first warning, I'm going to be talking about periods, bleeding, all that kind of thing, baby loss, or loads of stuff. So if you find any of that triggering or you're just a bit grossed out by any of that kind of thing, then please feel free to switch off and not watch this, because it's going to be a lot of that in there. So if it's not for you, then this video is definitely not for you. But the reason I wanted to do this video is because I wanted to raise some awareness. I ummed and ahed about it because I wasn't sure if I wanted to document this process. I don't exactly know when I'm going to post these videos. It might be a little while, like I did the fertility ones, after I've sort of got it all sorted in my head, because obviously when you put it out there, you're going to get questions and comments, and you need to be able to cope with that without making yourself ill, I guess, in the process, or getting upset about it. So it's really important that I'm in a good place, and I feel like I'm in a good place now to release them, so you may see it sooner rather than later. But if not, then that's why. So first off, this all started when I had fertility treatment 7 years ago. So I have a fertility playlist on YouTube that you can go and have a look in more detail. But basically what happened is I had 3 rounds of IUI that failed, and then I had a round of IVF, which I got pregnant with. So when I went to go and have a, to the clinic for them to have a look, they thought it was an ectopic pregnancy. I ended up at the hospital, they thought it was an ectopic pregnancy. So they gave me these injections because I was worried that it was going to burst and I was going to, bleed to death or whatever internally. And they got these injections. I had to have 3 because my blood type is O negative, and it's just has to be an O negative. I'm telling you this right now. Anyway, so I had to have 3 injections. So then the pregnancy hormones weren't going down enough. So I ended up having to have keyhole surgery and have a look. And I thought I might lose my tube or get it damaged, and since I couldn't get pregnant with 2 working tubes, 1 tube wasn't going to be great. But anyway, so I was quite upset about that at the time, but they had to look anyway, because I had to, obviously, because I didn't want to die. And they had to look, and they were like, oh, there's no ectopic pregnancy. Then they realised that my uterus was actually quite swollen, which gave them the indication that there was a baby in there. So I ended up having a scan after that, and turned out baby was in there, but it was too late because they gave me injections. So all this is sort of like trauma, said, for my mind and for my body, and it's the beginning of where I'm at now, basically. So a year after all the fertility treatment, I guess, is when the problems came on more. The first year, things sort of settled down. I didn't have very heavy periods, I think because it cleaned everything out. So I didn't have any periods. I didn't even have period pains. They were the first periods I'd ever had without period pains, apart from my first one when I was like 11. So that was like pretty amazing. But that was the only amazing thing about that time. So it was about a year after that the problems started. So I started getting clots. So only teeny tiny ones, but I'd never had them before. So that was a bit weird. But I'd spoken to my mother-in-law, who'd had half of IVF to help her sister get pregnant. And she had had a lot of really heavy bleeding and clots after she'd had that done. So I thought, oh, this might be why this is happening then. So I didn't worry about it too much. And at the time it was fine. I was still having like medium and light periods. There were still 4 days, and there was still a day of period pains. So it was fine. There was nothing like drastic. But then my period started extending. So instead of having 4 days, they went to 5 days. I wasn't too worried about that, because before I ever went on any contraception or anything way back when, I used to have periods for 5 days and 2 days of pain. So I thought, oh, well, I'm not having fertility, everything's settling down now. This probably is how my periods are supposed to be. So I didn't worry about that. Though the clots were a little bit weird. But they were only small. So I thought, yeah, I don't think it's anything major. And I wasn't in any of the pain that I normally was. Everything was like fine. So I didn't really worry about it. But then the periods just kept extending after a while. So they stayed at 5 days. And then, a few months later, I realised they were like 6 days. and then 7 days. And I decided to go to the doctors and be like, this was about this time last year, and was like, can I have a mini pill or something? Because my periods are getting heavier. They're distressing me quite a lot because, you know, they're heavier than they were. I've got clots, but they're only like little clots and all this kind of thing. I just don't want my period anymore because, you know, I'm not going to get pregnant. I can't be bothered with all this stress anymore. So he was like, okay, I'm going to have a mini pill. It was a man. That's crucial. And he gave me a progesterone only mini pill. If you don't know, the mini pill is where you have it every day about the same time and you don't have a break. So I started taking that, and he did warn me that it takes a couple of months, 2 or 3 months to settle down. So I might have some irregular bleeding and all that kind of thing, which I did. So I didn't worry about that because I was like, no, that's fine, because that's what he said. And eventually it did settle down. I thought, oh, it's working. This is great. This is absolutely brilliant. So I went back to the doctor, said I'd had a bit of a problem, but I think it's settled down now and stuff. And then he prescribed me some more of the mini pills that seemed to be working. So I carried on taking it. But I ended up, before I went back to him the second time, at the hospital because the bleeding was quite bad. The clots weren't little teeny ones anymore. They were like this. And when I went to Queen's Medical Centre, which is where everything with the baby happened 7 years ago. So that was lovely and triggering. So me and John sat in A&E for about 8 hours and had blood test, which told, no, I didn't. No, I did. I didn't have a blood test. And so long ago now, so much has happened. And anyway, basically I had a few tests, blood pressure, all those usual things that they do every time you go there, even if you've like broken your ankle. And then then I saw the consultant. He gave me some of this tranexamic, bless you, okay, acid, and to stop the bleeding, and it did actually work, which is when I went back to the doctor and was like, everything's settled down now, I think it's okay. I said I'd gone there. He seemed a bit like, why did I go to the hospital? But you know, he's a bloke who doesn't know about these things. And so yeah, so I've gone that and everything seemed to settle down and everything was good. But then the bleeding started again and I ended up in A&E again because the clots were like this. Oh God. So both times we'd phoned 111, and the first time they sent me to the hospital, I spoke to a consultant over the phone or whatever it is, ended up at the hospital. And then this time, the paramedics ended up coming out. They sent the paramedics and they ended up taking me to hospital. This time I went to Kingsmill, which is in Derby, or Derbyshire. And that A&E was much more pleasant experience. Didn't get triggered because that's not where I lost a baby. But the same result happened. They did the same sort of tests, ended up with tranexamic acid. No one seemed to be remotely bothered that I was bleeding still, and like, oh, you're a woman, you bleed, whatever's. Again, it was a man that I saw. They just don't really care. And it's not that they don't really care, it's just they don't really understand women's insides, obviously. They don't have those parts. But instead of referring to a female doctor or gynecologist or whatever, or even sending me to a gynecology department, they think they can just sort it out themselves, which they can't. So he gave me some more of this acid. Did it work? No, it didn't. But anyway, I ended up phoning the doctors again because this tranexamic acid wasn't working, and was like, hello, it's not working. I've been to A&E and this and stuff. She was like, well, have you tried the combination pill? I was like, no, I haven't tried the combination pill. So I ended up with a combination pill. And I'd had this before for contraception, which obviously turns out I didn't need, back in the day, in my 20s or whatever, late teens, for obviously contraception. And that was what stopped my period from 5 days to 4 days and one day of stomach cramps. So I was like, that's fine, I can cope with that. So obviously you have like 3 weeks of this tablet every day, and then you have a 7-day break, and then you go back on it and stuff like that. So I was like, that's fine. I take tablets, for my mental health and stuff in the evening, so it wasn't a big deal of like not remembering it and stuff. I was used to taking tablets. It was just taking an extra tablet at that point. So that's what I was doing. And sorry, it's like such a long story. And then, so I was taking that, and it seemed to be working for a while until it wasn't working anymore. I started bleeding this time the Thursday before the Thursday of Christmas. It is now the 1st of February, and I've still got some bleeding, though it is a lot less, but quite a bit happened in between. So one of the many times that I ended up at the doctor's, I had a little internal scan, but I have issues with that because of the trauma from fertility treatment. So they can't actually get the, that thing. Ladies, you know what I mean, like the duck thing. And because they try and open my cervix, but it won't open because my muscles are trying to contract it, because it's like, nope, like we've been here before and it's not happening. Like, you're not going in here. I can't cope with it. And then obviously it tries to open it. It causes me pain. My body registers the pain, thinks that what happened before is happening again. So therefore contracts even more, and basically they can't get in. So I can't have a smear test or anything like that currently. So anyway, so she had a little internal exam. She couldn't see very much because of, the issue, but she said my uterus looked swollen. She tried to put me in for a scan, but the scan was cancelled because apparently I didn't meet the criteria. Don't really know what that means. And then she also sent me for some blood tests, which showed that I was, my iron levels were a little low, I think it said, on the report. So that was great. So I was taking the combination pill, started taking combination pill or whatever. As I said, it was working, and then I started bleeding a week before Christmas, and basically I haven't stopped. So a couple of weeks ago, on a Friday, I started feeling a bit ill. I'd been to the cinema the day before and out for lunch with my mum, and I'd felt fine. But the Friday afterwards, I noticed a few things. I'd walked Molly and I was tired afterwards, as in like out of breath, like I'd gone running or something. I'd just done the normal walk for it. It wasn't a strenuous walk. I did this walk several times in a week and walked very similar to it, like every day, and I didn't get puffed out. But now I was puffed out. And also when I did yoga, it felt like I'd just been there doing loads of weights or something on my arms and legs, because when I tried to move my arms up like this to do like, Warrior 2 or whatever, they really, really ached, like I had been doing weights or something and for ages. It was bizarre. I woke up on Saturday and I really didn't feel very well. So I felt dizzy going from like lying to sitting or sitting to standing. It was like a head rush kind of dizzy. And then that would pass, and then I just feel like normal dizzy, if that makes sense. So when I was walking around or just standing up, I'd feel dizzy. I was okay sitting down once the head rush had passed. It was okay, but I only could sit for a certain amount of time, then I'd want to lie down again. I had a headache that was like at the back of my head. I've got a headache again here. A headache at the back of my head, and it was like down the sides of my neck there. I was deathly pale, literally. You couldn't see the colour of my lips. It was all one colour. It was so white. I'd never seen myself look so white. I was out of breath doing everything. So just walking up the stairs or having a shower or just moving into the kitchen from the living room and stuff like that. So I was out of breath, like I'd gone jogging or something. And I felt like there was restriction in my chest. There, my legs were shaking when I was going down the stairs and stuff. There was just a lot. I just did not feel well, and obviously it was not right. But it was Saturday, so no doctors are open on Saturdays. So on Monday, I phoned the emergency doctors, and then it wasn't until the evening that they got back to me, and it was a bloke, which wasn't great. So you have to try and explain everything all over again, because nobody reads your notes and nobody communicates. So you have to re-explain absolutely everything. So we're talking about, at this point, like a year's worth of stuff. And he didn't seem that bothered. He kept going on about a smear test. And I tried to explain to him why I wasn't up to date with my smear test. But because he's a bloke and he didn't get any of it, so it was like talking to a brick wall. So in the end, my husband was there so he could hear everything that was going on as well, because if I forgot something or whatever, I wanted him to know, if you know what I mean, so the two of us would remember everything between us, especially because I wasn't feeling very well. And John was like shaking his head, just leave it kind of thing. So I just was like, all right, okay. The smear test, like knowing full well I wasn't going to be able to get one. But he was like, oh, you could have like diazepam or something. I'm like, I'm on fluoxetine. I can't have diazepam as well to relax. You just don't get it. So I was just like, whatever. Anyway, but he did put me in for some more blood tests. He did give me some industrial iron tablets. He gave me some more of this tranexamic acid. So this was the fourth lot, and 2 lots hadn't worked. Previous lots hadn't worked so far, so I didn't think that was going to work, but there's no point. He was like not really listening, so there's no point talking to him about that. And I already had a doctor's appointment for the Thursday about the bleeding, and he said to keep that appointment, so I did. So I booked him for the blood test the day after. We got the prescription the same day of the iron tablets and stuff, and the tranexamic acid. Started taking that day. When went to get the blood test later that day because I have the NHS app thing, and they were like, so they put the results on there, and they sent me a message, and it was like, you are significantly anemic. Please make sure you go to your doctor's appointment on Thursday. We really do need to see you. So I was like, okay. So fast forward to Thursday, and obviously I went to go to the doctor's. It was quite an early morning appointment that I got. So we went there, I went in, the doctor was female. She was really good actually, really understanding and stuff. She did try to do a terminal exam, wasn't very successful, would have been surprised if she was successful, but I'd explained to her that it probably wouldn't, but she could give it a go. So she did, it wasn't successful, so we just, yeah. Anyway, she said that I really didn't look very well, and she was worried about me because I could also hear my heart. I'm not even joking. So I was like sitting on the sofa, and I thought it was Molly's heart on the sofa. And I was like, whose heart is that? And John's like, what? And I was like, whose heart? And he was like, can I think about yours? I could literally, it was beating hard rather than, and maybe a little bit fast, but it wasn't like, there wasn't palpitations or anything, but I could literally hear it in my ears all the time. It was so bizarre when I was trying to go to sleep. It was like, dum, 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 in my ears. Oh, it was so bizarre. Anyway, so this doctor, I could tell, was quite worried about me. She said, I need to go to the hospital. And she says, I think you might need a blood transfusion. I was like, what? Blood transfusion? What? Like, I hadn't even thought about that. I thought I was going to have some iron tablets. And after a couple of weeks, I thought to myself, wow, what do you mean I'm going to go for blood transfusion? So I'm having a small panic because I have OCD and contamination OCD. And the idea of having a blood transfusion scared the life out of me because it's someone else's blood in my body. So to me, it's like dirty. Even though these people who give blood are absolutely flipping amazing and quite frankly gods because they saved my life. So, but obviously the way OCD works, it just doesn't go on those levels. It just goes to straight panic about absolutely nothing. It didn't help that my mum had a blood transfusion when I was born, which was in the 80s when they didn't scan it properly, and then she had to go back to the doctors in the 90s or early 2000s or whatever it was, and was like, yeah, we need to test you for like AIDS and HIV and hepatitis and all this kind of thing because we didn't test your blood. So that got me a little bit, I was like, oh God, what if they don't test this stuff? What if it's not proper and I end up with something else and it's so much worse? But I knew I was being stupid with that as well, because I know obviously because of that, there's a lot more tests and stuff that go into it. They know a lot more about it and things like that. So yeah, so I knew mostly just having a stress, but at the same time it was annoying. So right there and then, the doctor phoned the hospital, and apparently there's a department you can have same day blood transfusions, emergency ones. But they said, by the sounds of it, I need to go to gynecology. So I went up at gynecology. So she sent me to a different hospital, again, third one. And this was the Derby Hospital, the best one I've been to so far. And she sent me there and straight to the department. And I went to the department, and because even though I'd been there when she'd been on the phone to them, they suddenly didn't know anything about it or hadn't got anything written down. No one had spoke to them, the usuals. But anyway, as it turned out, they were really good and sorted it. They could see I was not very well. John booked me in and tried to explain things because I was literally on the chairs in the waiting room like this because my body just wanted to go to sleep, and it just felt so foggy and things in there was just ridiculous. She said, you don't look very well, and I was like, oh, I don't feel very well. And she put me in this room. It was there's two bays in the room, and there was a woman in one bay, they had curtains splitting it, and then she went, and it was just me in the room after that. So we're in there, and I was waiting. There was various people had blood tests. I can't remember properly because I just didn't feel with it or not very well, so John will probably be better at explaining this bit. But there was various doctors and nurses, had some more blood tests. A consultant came, she explained what they thought they were going to do. She talked to me again about things. I think, with John's help, we got out there what had been going on for the last year with stuff, and I was around circles and all this. And she said that I needed a blood transfusion because my iron levels were so low. They were 65, and they're supposed to be, I think, 130-ish. So 65 is the lowest you can get before you basically collapse and possibly die. So I was literally standing at the door between being healthy and really very much not being. So yeah, I had to wait for the blood transfusion. So John went home at this point because we have a dog, as you can see, and she needs to be let out, go to the toilet, go for a walk, fed, and all I was doing was basically sleeping on this really uncomfortable bed thing. waiting for them to get the blood for the blood transfusion. So eventually they came, and John did come back again after a little while when the blood transfusion had started. I did find it quite fascinating. And it doesn't hurt if you haven't had a blood transfusion before. It's literally just goes up here, goes through a machine, and it goes in by a, whatever the word is, cannula in my arm. But I had trouble trying to find the veins because obviously I had zero blood going around really. So I've got bruises still here and stuff where they tried to find one there and they tried to find one here, and a doctor ended up having to come in and eventually found one here, and she made a bit of a mess. She did tell me she was going to make a mess. She's like, always make a mess of this, and there was literally like blood coming down my arm. Luckily I'm not bothered about blood because that would have been awful, and obviously having a blood transfusion wouldn't have been great if I was funny about blood. But yeah, so I was fine with all that. I had a blood transfusion. I had 2 units of blood, so that's apparently quite a lot. I don't know, I've never had a blood transfusion before, so apparently it was more than what mum had after she gave birth to me, so she said that was quite a lot. I was like, okay. But yeah, so I had those units. It takes 2 hours for each unit to go in, and the place closed at like 7, so I had to go into a ward. It was just a random bed in a random ward to have the rest of the second blood transfusion. But it was like the ward was just, I don't know, it was like a lot of very, very old people, and yeah, they were just sort of, they really did not look well. Like they literally looked like they were on death's door. I now didn't look like I was on death's door, but I had previously. So the colour after the first unit really came back. Like it was bizarre because I have a cut on my hand that I didn't know I got and couldn't see until I had the first blood transfusion, and I could actually see colours. I could see my veins again. I could see the pink behind my nails. You could see my lips again. Like it was crazy watching my body just like come back to life. It was bizarre, and I felt much better after the first one, so I was sitting up and things. They said that I'd feel benefits like straight away. So yeah, I had the rest of the second unit on a ward. John got some food and stuff. We were eating and having a drink while this was going through or whatever, and we were just sitting there waiting. And there were some very ill people around. So then my OCD contamination was that I'm going to catch something from one of these people here. Because it smelled as well, and for me, when it's OCD, when it smells, it's dirty if it doesn't smell good. So I was having a bit of an issue with that. But anyway, sorted it, left, everything was okay, felt much better, was walking normally rather than just sort of like, I couldn't walk fast before because I was out of breath, whereas I could walk normally and not be out of breath now. And I was able to go home the same day, which was brilliant because I did not want to stay at a hospital. I wanted to go home. I wanted to have a shower and get rid of all what I felt were germs everywhere, and go to sleep in my own bed where I was likely to get more sleep and things like that. And I was taking some more tablets, these ones, I'm still taking them, norethisterone, that are supposed to stop the bleeding. And I was supposed to take the tranexamic acid at the same time, which I did, but you only can take that for like 7 days, so I don't have that anymore. But this I'm still going. I've got like a month's worth supply. The bleeding hasn't completely stopped yet, though it is just spotting last time I checked. So then on to the next day, which was a Friday. So it was a week and 2 days ago. I and went back to the hospital because they'd booked a scan for me. This scan that I was supposed to go to in October but didn't, because they cancelled it. So I actually had it on the Friday. Woo! So it was like an internal scan. So if you've had, sometimes they do this in very early pregnancy, or if you've had fertility treatment, you'll know, or anything like what I've had or got going on. So it's like a wand thing, and they shove it up there, and then they have a proper like look. Obviously we're having a look at my uterus, seeing if there was anything there, because one thing that can cause a lot of bleeding is like fibroids, for instance. So when I had fertility treatment, I was not aware of any fibroids. No one told me about any fibroids or anything else on there. There was nothing. So as far as I'm concerned, I didn't have anything until then. This is something that's happened afterwards, but I don't know for definite because those doctors weren't great. So it might be that they just didn't bother telling me or didn't notice. I don't know. Or what they did caused it. Don't know. Anyway, so basically she had a look. It was quite like, I was there a little while. It's not really uncomfortable. It was uncomfortable on one side. But yeah, it wasn't painful or anything like that. And up to me who has pain with that. And I've never had pain with that scan before. So everyone else is probably going to be perfectly fine with it anyway, if I am. So yeah, I had that, then obviously I had to do a report and stuff. So while we're waiting for that, I had another blood test to see if the blood transfusion was okay, and it had storage low. Well, that's not very useful, is it? Anyway, and it had gone up, my iron levels. So instead of being 65, I was now 87, so it gone up 22. I had the industrial iron tablet still and the bleeding things. So I haven't been back. So I think probably, I'm being a bit scared it's just going to cancel the video, which is not useful. Right, I think I've solved that problem. Anyway, so where was I? Yeah, so I had that, and obviously it gone up, and usually it takes like 2 weeks or so for your blood to like recoup when you've given blood and things like that. So, and they obviously weren't particularly worried about it, and I have to admit, like today, even though my iron levels were still low, like today, sort of over a week, 10 days or so after the blood transfusion, I do feel loads better than I did like Thursday, a few days ago. So I feel like my body is actually sorting itself out a bit the last couple of days now. Anyway, so I had that, and then obviously I went to a consultant and they talked about the scan and like what was going to happen afterwards. So they found a couple of things. One was a fibroid, which they said was sizable. I think it was about 3 or 4 inches. Fibroid, and they also found a polyp, which is like a growth in the lining of my womb in the inside. So basically that can be cancerous, but it also cannot be cancerous. It does not necessarily mean it's cancerous. So what they want to do now is have a proper look with a camera. So go into general anaesthetic, and they put a camera up there and to have a proper look at the polyp. And I'm waiting for that now, basically. So they have like sections of time. So the first couple of weeks, the most important ones are people who are like cancer patients, and then after that the second block is the block that I'm supposed to be in. So I've just got to wait for a call from the hospital to say, can you come in, you know, whenever and have this. So it's only general anaesthetic, it's not an operation as in I'm going to have stitches and stuff. So the idea is that it doesn't take as long to recover. It'll only be like, you know, 24 hours because of the anaesthetic, rather than, you know, because I've got to have stitches and all this kind of thing. So everything would be pretty much back to normal within like 24, 48 hours or whatever. So that's a good thing. But while they're there, because the hospital was so good with my mental health, my past trauma and stuff, it was all women, that might be why. They decided that if I needed a biopsy, with a polyp, that they were going to do that when I was under anaesthetic as well, because it will cause me less trauma and less upset if they do it all in one go. So that's great, that's really great. I'm very excited about that, to do it once. So I'm basically just waiting for that. So I don't know, you know, I don't know, I wouldn't be surprised if I get a call this next week for an appointment the week after or the week after that or something. The bleeding's practically almost disappeared. It's so much better. So I'm able, and I feel so much better in myself. The last couple of days I've been able to do, I did some cleaning today, guys. I did some cleaning and things, and yeah, I do feel much better than I did even just after the blood transfusion and stuff. It's a bit weird to think that I basically could have died. It's weird because I have actually felt worse. Like when I had gastroenteritis years and years ago, I felt worse than I did with this. And it's a bit of a weird concept. I don't think I've quite got my head round that. It's a bit like, really? I didn't feel like I was. And yeah, I'm not very good at sort of resting. As soon as I feel a bit better, I'm like, right, I'm off, I'm ready to do things. So I'm trying to like be good, but that I am probably you know, I'm still trying to do little bits and stuff and keep going a bit, but just not pushing myself. Not being able to do yoga. And I'm surprisingly not worried about the camera, because I'm going to be in general anaesthetic. I've been in general anaesthetic twice now, so I feel a bit better about that now than I did when I went before. And it's a camera, it's not going to take a lot of recovery, and yeah, I'm not actually worried about whether it's cancerous or not at this stage, because you don't know. And weirdly, I'm more worried about the fact I'm not worried than I am about whether it's cancerous or not. So that's how it is. I think, you know, it's a bit weird because I don't normally have physical problems. Like all my health problems are mental health problems, so it's a bit weird having like physical problems, and quite frankly it's annoying. I expect my body to keep itself sorted while I try and keep track of my mental health, and look what it's doing. But my mental health in general was actually really good. I got it to a really good stage before all of this, and it still feels good. I'm not overly worried or anxiety. I haven't got any new compulsions and stuff that are popping up because it's worried and I'm in danger and stuff. So that's really good. It's coped much better with the blood transfusion than I ever thought it was going to. It even coped with the hospital a couple of times and the doctors pretty well as well, considering that in my head, that's like the dirtiest places ever, and I'm going to come out with every single disease under the sun. So yeah, it's been doing really, really well. Easy to ignore, easy to sort of like calm down and stuff like that. And yeah, as I said, I don't think I've had any new compulsions or anything like that. So yeah, it's been all right that wise. So I'm really, really pleased about that. But anyway, that is now you guys up to date in more detail than I have put so far on social media. I wanted to do this video to raise awareness. And as I said before, I don't know when exactly this is going to come out because it's going to depend on how I feel. But I feel like it's going to be released obviously at some point when I feel okay with it. And yeah, I'll keep you updated. It might be a while before I'm ready to sort of talk about anything else, and there might be a while before I'm ready to publish anything else, but we'll see. And yeah, I'll put this all in like one playlist so that you can see it if you want to follow the story. If you want to, I don't know, reassure yourself, or you know, if you're going through a similar process but you're further back than me and seeing where it's going and all that kind of thing, or whatever. So yeah, anyway, we definitely need to talk about this kind of stuff more. So I'm going to be one of those people who's going to start it. So anyway, thank you so much for watching, especially if you stuck to the end. I really appreciate it. And yeah, I'll be back soon.